Raising teenagers is hard. Understatement of the century. This is Mentor Select. Mentor Select. Parenting teens to be successful adults. Mentor Select serves parents who are raising teens. Every week, Derek interviews leading experts that work with teens, educators, counselors, mentors, and authors to give you practical tips, strategies, and resources that you can incorporate immediately to better connect and understand your teen. All while parenting them to be successful adults, focusing on social and emotional development, something that's left out of the classroom, but not in ours. Be sure to subscribe, share, and rate. This is Mentor Select, and this is your host, Derek Phillips.
All right, parents, you're in for a wonderful treat today. We have Sherry James joining us. She's a speaker, author, coach, and the founder of the nonprofit 2020 Lives Changed, Inc. How are you, Sherry?
I am hanging in there. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. So hanging in. It's rolling with the punches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, actually, I was on a call earlier today with Jeff Brodnax, and you remember him?
Yeah, Jeff.
Yeah, he's awesome. He
Great
told
guy.
me to thank you. But I said, how are you doing? And he said, blessed anyway.
Blessed anyway. Despite it all, still blessed.
Despite it all. Yeah. So I'm gonna use that.
I like that. Well, yeah, definitely God will hit us with some challenges, but we can overcome them. We have what it takes, certainly. Well, Sherry, definitely glad you're joining us. Where are you joining us from?
So thanks for having me. I am joining you from Frisco, Texas.
All right, Frisco. For those who are not familiar with Frisco, it's a suburb of Dallas, Texas, and it's definitely a beautiful city.
Yeah,
and Frisco.
5 minutes from Oklahoma.
Yeah, right on that border. But I think Frisco is like one of the fastest growing cities as far as suburban cities. Beautiful. There, a lot of growth.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, Sherry, my audience is parents who are raising teenagers. I know that's something you know about. Mm-hmm. And we just want to pick your brain a little bit about just all of the expertise and experience that you have. And then also know you're a parent as well. How old is your son?
So I have 2 children.
Oh, 2. Okay.
My daughter is 31.
Oh, yeah.
My son is 13. Well, he'll be 13 on the 29th. So I've got 31 and 13-year-old.
All right. So you got to have a brand new teenager. Brace yourself.
Oh, yeah. Pray for me.
Should be fun. Awesome. Well, Sherry, I'd like to first get started to learn more about your nonprofit. Who do you serve? What was the inspiration behind you starting your nonprofit?
Thanks for that. Yeah. So last year, I wrote my first book.
Congratulations!
Thank you. I gotta catch up with you. I know you're on 3 now. I gotta get it together and catch up with you. But I wrote my first book. It was very cathartic for me. It was about my dad's suicide. It's called After the Suicide: Leading with Love and Light.
Okay.
I am 48 years old. I'll be 49 very soon. And I'd not ever dealt with the trauma of my dad's suicide. I did, a lot of research. I'm in project management by trade. So I love to gather data. I found a lot of data around people, active duty military and veterans who commit suicide or have attempted. I did a lot of research on the impact to the families thereafter, writing my book. And so in October of last year, I decided that after doing all the research, people know about the issues with mental health, specifically around suicide, but no one really wants to talk about it. Right. It's a taboo subject, especially in certain cultures. So I decided that I would set a goal for myself and the people that are in my tribe, that we would try to touch 2020 lives this year by having the difficult conversations around mental health and mental wellness, suicide prevention, diversity and inclusion. I mean, those conversations that no one wants to have.
Right.
We have made a commitment to touch at least 2020 lives by being the advocates for difficult conversations.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredibly important. And like you said, those are conversations people don't want to have, but they're real issues that people are battling every day. And the impact is substantial. Right. So just it's trying to sweep it under the rug, turn a blind eye, that doesn't fix anything. It's not solving the issue. And I've had several people on my podcast who talked about just how depression and mental illness and suicide is so prevalent amongst youth. Mm-hmm. And to me, that is so, it's eye-opening, it's startling. It's like, wow, what can we do to really address that issue? And I think what you're doing is part of the solution, actually starting off by having those conversations. Now, in the context of you having these difficult conversations, what are some things that you've learned about, I guess, just ways we can kind of erode that negative stigma with mental illness and suicide?
So I've got a couple of examples. So I had the opportunity to speak at my son's career day.
Okay.
This was, a long time ago when kids still went to school.
Back in the day when they was in live school.
A long time ago, back in the day when you had to actually go to school. But no, in December of last year, I had the opportunity to go, and I typically do career day, but I show up as an IT professional, a director. Mm-hmm. And I had the opportunity to speak to 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students at my son's school. And I asked his permission, can we talk about my book, or would you prefer I not? And he's like, no, absolutely. We should, we need to have these top conversations. And I was floored with the response from the kids, how informed they were, how much data they had around suicide. Most of them had experienced either someone in their life committing or attempting suicide. I was just floored.
Wow.
I wasn't expecting that, right? I was expecting to go and just kind of talk to them about the data that I had pulled, and they had even more data than I did. And so I learned that the first step is just listening and having conversations in our own homes about mental health. This is a tough time for everyone.
Yeah.
Especially our children, because, teenage children, they live for school. They are.
Exactly. They're such social beings.
And so, I think just having that kind of conversation with your children, it's hard because you have to give them some choices. How can I make you still feel a part of a social, group? What can we do to make sure that you still feel engaged? And that is not a cookie cutter response. That is very individualized. It's based on your kid and what they like. And know that conversation may indeed be uncomfortable, even with your own children, because they don't know how to articulate, I don't want to be here with you all day, Mom. I love you, but I'd rather hang out with my friends. So, I think the first tip is just having those conversations in the house. I've learned, some of the kids that I spoke to in December of last year still follow me on Instagram. They reach out to me from time to time and give me suggestions, right? They're maybe with your teenager, you should make sure that they're consuming more positive information than negative, right? So with all of the things floating in the news right now and social media, there's a lot of negativity.
Right.
With a still forming brain, we've got to be very careful about what our children, what they're consuming and how much of it is negative. We need to ensure that there is a balance with some positive information being consumed. So I think that's tip number 2. Listening and listening for their own responses, not the one that you think is correct.
Yeah, it's important. Important distinction.
Yeah. And to be honest, like I'm still figuring it out, right? Because none of us have lived through a pandemic before.
Right.
There's no answer, right? Everyone is just really, we're just trying to figure it out. The key is
we're all in the same boat.
Yeah, we're all in the same boat. But I think the third and the kind of the final, just to answer that particular question, is employ and engage your mental health professionals, right? So for those of you who still have access to mental health care through your employer or healthcare provider, take full advantage of that, because too many times people don't seek the help of a mental health professional until they already feel overwhelmed. And this applies to teenagers as well.
Right.
So I would encourage, families to, have a counselor that's the family counselor or therapist, and normalize the conversation about mental health and illness, because if we can't do it now, we won't ever be able to. So definitely engaging those partners in these conversations. And understand that even the mental health professionals are struggling with the same things that we're struggling.
Many of them are seeing counselors if they as well.
They all,
no one's exempt from it, certainly.
Right.
Yeah, those are really great tips. And going back to the first one, as far as parents really just listening, I think that's one that's often overlooked, or just it's not given enough attention, just how important it is for parents to listen to their kids. And as you said, listen for their responses, not kind of leading them to what we want them to respond or how we want them to respond, but actually hearing them out and really helping them, empowering them by giving them choices and just making them part of the process. I like that a lot. And then with having a family counselor, that's something I haven't heard people say before, anyone on my show say before. And I like that because it's something you normalizes it. And if you start young where, hey, we're all going to this family counselor, same as like a family doctor,
right, then
that makes it like, hey, this is normal. And I have someone, a neutral third party who's a professional that I can go speak to anytime I need. Yeah, that's wonderful. I'm actually going to make sure incorporate that into something that our family does. Yeah, fantastic. And just going back to with suicide, and just I think I read a statistic of the CDC where I think suicide was the second leading cause of death behind accidents for youth under the age of 26, I believe. So from like 5 to 26. Mm-hmm. And it's like, wow, you just think about kids as young as 5 or 6 years old are committing suicide.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, like what could be going on at that young of age where they feel that they need to end it all. And like, what is the obviously the parents may need to be incorporating those tips that you just provided. Like, are you listening? Are you paying attention to what's going on with them? We just really can't overlook that. And I was speaking to a lady I had met this weekend, and she told me about her godson was 12 years old and recently committed suicide. And she had mentioned just like how he was in the process of, they knew that he needed help and he was starting to go to counseling, but it was maybe one of them cases where, like you mentioned, like they're not really seeking professional help until it's too late, or until it's just like where the issues are just so obvious and just already just overflowing. So definitely pays to be proactive as much as possible.
And a couple of things that I want to mention to some points that you just made. So I will tell you that one of the students that I spoke to last year wrote a letter to me, and she said that my parents, I'm paraphrasing, but she said, my parents believe that because we live in a nice house in a nice neighborhood and we have nice things, that I have no reason to be sad. And that resonated with me, because depression as a clinical diagnosis is not something that you choose, right? It's not something that children, whether they're 5 or 15 or even human, 50, right? You don't choose depression. It is a diagnosis. It is a medical condition. And just like we don't tell people who have, I'm a type 1 diabetic. Like no one told me that, well, you should just choose not to be diabetic. Right. Choose to have a functioning pancreas.
Right.
So having that same kind of understanding that it's not anything that we can give them, buy them, provide for them. Stress is stress. Our brains are unique, and the way we handle stress is very different. And so, so that is one point that I want to make to your
very
listeners.
important point. Yep.
Very cognizant of understanding mental health diagnoses, whether it's diagnosed or not. Mental health, illnesses or mental illness, excuse me. It's chemical, it's physiological, right? And so, if you think of things like video games and the fact that, like, my son will be 13 and his friends play Halo and all of these kind of strategic, real person, whatever, but they're shooting and killing.
Violent games.
Yeah, it's extremely violent. Yeah. So the children become a bit desensitized to death, right?
Right.
If I'm playing an Xbox and I get taken out by, the enemy team,
Right.
I can, turn the game off and turn it back on, and here I am, I can start all over again. And that's not real life. We know that. But our children at 5, 7, 9, 14 have a harder time understanding real versus not real, because their only experience with death was in a video game in some cases, right? So, so definitely understanding that it's not a choice. Mental health is a responsibility from a proactive perspective.
Right.
Even mental illness is not something that can be changed because of the area code or the zip code that you live in. That's just not how it works. So
yeah, it's not at all. And something I shared on your show was my mom. She was diagnosed with schizophrenia when I was 11. And it's something where, for me, I realized that kind of helped me have a greater understanding and appreciation how important it is to manage your stress, how important it is to seek professional help as early on as possible, because, like you said, it's an illness, it's a diagnosis, just like medical, just like I said, diabetes or cancer or something like that. So we can't have that negative stigma or try to just ignore it, because the impact is equally as harmful as any other disease or illness. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Now, something I want to get some more of your insight regarding, like, once a family member does commit suicide, and you mentioned, like, with your book, how you research just how families deal with that and the impact that it has on families. Can you talk about that some?
Absolutely. So I will say personally, and again, this is my disclaimer, like, I am speaking on my own personal experience, right? Most of my feedback is anecdotal from my own research because of my unique situation with suicide. And so I will tell you in short, my father committed suicide when I was 7. And he was, this was the early 70s. He was a veteran. He had gone and served in the Air Force, came back and did not have access to resources, or, again, even if he had access to resources, being a person of color in our community, we don't allow that. We discourage it, right? We're like, no, we don't go talk to people. What happens if
be labeled as crazy,
right? And just like, no,
outcast,
you don't do that. And then, after my dad committed suicide, my mother struggled for the next 20 years and felt, I watched her health decline. She, in essence, also committed suicide by the time I was 27, right? So, like, for me, that survivor's guilt is probably the most dangerous part, right?
Okay.
So, because we don't talk about it, and we all want to know, what could I have done to help this not happen? Was it my fault? So I'm an only child, and I spent most of my life listening to my mother tell me that, I was a quitter like my dad was, right? And whatever I did, I would probably fail because my dad did. And that was her grieving, right? She didn't know who else.
Lashing out.
Yeah, I mean, it was just her and I. And so I will say that from a survivor's guilt perspective, that is extremely important, to be surrounded by a network of people who can explain to you that, if a person has committed suicide, then that, you can heal from that. It's not your fault. It was never something that you could have necessarily avoided, right? I mean, you would like to think so, right? We all want to say, if I'd known about it, then I would have been able to change it. But what we can do is change the environment to where people are comfortable talking about mental illness before we get there. So back to that point, if someone's reached that point, they're probably going to do it. Now, what can we do about normalizing the conversation? Talking out loud about the impact as a survivor has been vital, because I have had suicidal thoughts in my life.
Okay.
And the thing that keeps me from committing it is because I know what it feels like to be left after the fact, like to be, left to spend the rest of my life figuring out, was there something that I did? Was there something I could have done? So yeah, definitely normalizing conversations around stress.
Right.
We tend to tell our kids, like, you got it good compared to blah, 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 right? You have no reason to.
Parents love saying that. You didn't have as hard as I did.
Yeah, and kids don't have that context, right? It doesn't matter what you had. It doesn't matter that I have a nice house or nice. If I'm sad, I'm sad, right?
Exactly.
So having a safe space for conversations about suicide after the fact, because it's almost just as bad when after someone commits suicide, no one talks about it, right? Nobody wants to go over, like, how are you feeling? Do you feel as if you could have done something different? And we just pass on that generational curse to the next generation. And we're like, don't talk about it. It happened, but nobody knows. And it's not a battle we should fight alone.
Right. You have such a unique experience with losing two parents to suicide. And I think it's just incredibly inspirational and powerful that you're channeling that experience. So you're talking about it and help others who are either dealing with it or more on the prevention side as well. So that's really incredible. Definitely applaud you for that. It's important.
Thank you. I love that you use that. I say that often. I feel like I've been uniquely qualified to tell this story because it's my story. And I know that some parents don't have any experience with having these conversations because they didn't have it with their parents. They've not had these conversations. So I'm blessed to have the Toastmasters background that I can speak about pretty much anything.
I love Toastmasters.
You knew I was going to have a Toastmasters plug in there. So.
You got to. I'm all for it.
But yeah, so I'm very blessed to have a tribe of people that surround me that keep us honest, and we all are committed to changing these lives and touching lives. It's really cool to know that everything that happens to us happens for a reason.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in that.
You can be intentional about making someone else's life better, especially right now. We all need to be able to jump in and do that.
Absolutely. Because certainly under current circumstances with just the pandemic and just isolation at home, those are things that kind of allows those suicidal thoughts to fester and kind of just just add to the depression, being isolated and not feeling you have the support and just feeling like no one to miss you and things like that. So it's a huge need.
And I think another thing, Derek, is that I think that we don't think about as parents, especially of teenage children, is the stresses that might exist in our kids' friends' homes. So, for example, so again, my daughter's 31, but when my daughter was in high school, she had an illness that required her to be at home for a substantial amount of time.
Okay.
And she attempted suicide, and people assumed that it was because of her medical diagnoses. But the truth is that there was abuse happening in her home, and her only safe space was school. It was the only time she was able to get away from her abuser. And so I want to encourage your listeners to be cognizant of the impact that the pandemic is having on not just our children, but our children's friends and the people that they hang out with, because in some cases, those children are in homes with abusive parents. They're in homes that they may not be able to eat because they're not going to school. So these all are other characteristics that impact mental health. And so showing grace for, your kids' friends, because you just don't know what's happening in their home. And it may be more than just self-isolation. It may be self-isolation with an abuser, which is one of the toughest, right?
Yeah, you get you're getting no break. You're not being able to have this. Yeah, wow. Yes, that's so true, and certainly one of the factors I have to consider with online learning, and the school can be a safe haven, and then also to that point, a lot of abuse cases are reported by school officials, whether it's teachers, things like that, because they're actually able to see it, see the bruises or signs, but now the kid's not going to school. So it's going to be fewer reports as a result. So,
absolutely.
Really good point. Now, pivoting to online learning, and now a lot of parents went from being parents to now they're teachers as well, trying to handle all the challenges that comes with virtual learning. How are you handling those challenges, and just any suggestions you have for parents?
I meditate. No,
that helps.
Literally, actually.
No joke. Meditation.
Actually, have my woosah moments. So I do have a background in training, and I will tell you that, my training was for adult learners, and that typically has a different methodology, right? But a lot of the adult learning kind of foundation exists in online learning, right? So making sure that you understand your students' best way of learning, right? Are you do you learn better when you hear something? Is it better when you see it? It's better if you have to do it. So it's almost like it's a discovery. And most parents aren't equipped to do it because we didn't go to school to be teachers. We didn't have to be teachers. So, it's learning the skills of asking questions, back to listening.
Yeah, active listening.
It's back to listening. It always comes back to communication. But definitely understanding, how does your child learn best? Do they work better in a super highly structured environment where you have to sit there and make sure that they log into every single class, every single hour? Or is this an opportunity for you to empower them and give them their own accountability, which, to be honest with you, I don't think I did a good job as a parent because I was very strict, right? I'm like, hey, we got this from this time to this time, manager too, right? Now we have to give them that autonomy to go, look, okay, you know what you need to do,
right?
Especially teenagers, right? This is the time that we can prepare them for the rest of their lives, because there's not going to be someone there telling them every hour to log in when they go to college.
Right.
There's not going to be someone there making sure they show up at work every day. So this, I think, could be used as a positive from a learning experience to go, this is what real life is like. And you have to hold yourself accountable. You have to be responsible for your actions. I think the second tip as it comes to online learning is celebrating wins. Our teenagers are used to instantaneous gratification. They're used to, even unwarranted gratification and rewards. So in that, we can't deny them of that. So when they do make good choices, good job for logging in all your classes today. Let's go, get a concrete, whatever. Find ways to reward positive behavior, to get them excited about online learning. My 13-year-old wants to know more than what is in the curriculum, so he gets rewarded for going above and beyond.
Yeah, that positive reinforcement.
Yep.
Yeah,
and he'll get rewarded for that in college, and he'll get rewarded for that in real life. So I think just prepare. If we see online learning as a way to prepare our teens for their journey as future leaders, then it should take some of the stress off. It's not easier, but we know why we're doing it.
Right, exactly. So, I totally agree. And then also gives us a greater appreciation for everything that teachers do.
Amen.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. Much greater appreciation. Their job's not easy.
At all. But I commend the teachers. The teachers are really doing the best job that they know how to pivot and be agile in this environment. So kudos to the teachers who haven't just decided, you know what, I'm not doing this because this isn't what I signed up for.
Exactly.
So, I have so much respect for teachers. I always have, but even more so now.
Yeah.
Because it's definitely not my calling. Like, children is not my.
It takes a special person, certainly. That special servant leader, indeed. All right. Well, definitely. Well, Sherry, also tell us more about I know you host a IG Live show. Tell us about that.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So we record tonight. So on Wednesdays at 7 p.m., we do an IG Live. I have a couple of topics that I kind of go back and forth on.
Okay.
The series, for the most part, is called Difficult Conversations. And so we're talking about things like diversity and inclusion in the workplace. We're talking about just kind of the state of the world as it applies to the pandemic and the stressors that brings on. Tonight, we'll be talking about the stresses of voting. One of the city of Dallas, one of the policy managers will be my guest tonight.
Awesome.
And we'll talk a little bit about, disenfranchised communities and voting, and we'll talk about policies and how policies can sometimes add to systemic racism.
Right.
But, we talk about forgiveness, and we talk about love, and we talk about healing and sheltering in peace. So really the IG Live platform is an opportunity for people to ask those tough questions to a person, right? Not just throwing it out to the internet and letting, Google answer. It's like, having that human connection.
Right.
I love it. I really enjoy, having those conversations. The time goes by so quickly. We scheduled an hour for it. And, when you were on the show, we ran out of time the first time. So it's cathartic for me. Mm-hmm. But people love having the opportunity to just say, for example, one of my coworkers was like, I didn't know it was rude to touch a Black woman's hair in the workplace, right? And, and that could have gone really differently. I could have been like, of course not. Like,
Duh.
It was an opportunity to ask the question safely. And so we will give you responses that
no judgment zone. Like it's a safe place. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a safe place. And so I enjoy that. And then, we have a different version of the show. It's called With Your Mind in Mind. And that's not live. It's recorded. We do that every week as well. And there we talk more about how to successfully make it through this pandemic, right? So sheltering in peace. What are we doing to maintain our sanity during these times? And so, it's the IG Live it's a lot of fun, and a lot of people are telling me that it's really helping them in their environments. So that adds to our 2020 lives.
Yeah, I was about to say you're well on your way for that hitting that 2020 marker. I'm sure it's going far past it, exceeding it. Yeah. That's wonderful, and I certainly have the honor and pleasure of being a guest on your IG Live, and I enjoyed it. It was the first time I've done a live event like that over IG, and it was interactive. And it was a safe place to just talk about a wide range of topics. So,
thank you so much. You are definitely one of the fan favorites. Know that I will be asking for you to come back for round 3.
Anytime. I certainly enjoyed it. Fantastic way. That highly encouraged listeners, Mentor Select listeners, to check it out. And I'll make sure I include all the information in our show notes. So we can check you out. And you say every Wednesday at 7 p.m.?
Every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Yep.
Awesome. Cool.
Sherry James, PMP. It's a lot of fun. I look forward to seeing some of your listeners on the thread. It'd be cool. Absolutely.
Well, Sherry, you've given us a lot of great tips, strategies, and resources that parents can incorporate today to definitely help better prepare their teens to be successful adults and really adapt to just all of the changes that they're faced with during this pandemic. So certainly appreciate that. Sherry, what would be the best way for listeners to get in contact with you?
So we mentioned IG. My handle is pretty much the same everywhere. So Sherry James, PMP. Sherry.
Okay.
The same on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn.
You're all over.
I have a YouTube channel now,
Awesome.
which is kind of cool. So yeah, so you can find me on any of those. I also, and I forgot to mention this to you before, but I also appeared on an Amazon Prime video.
Wow.
Called Speak Up.
Okay.
And so that's another way to just kind of hear more about the 2020 Lives movement and where it came from. So if you're an Amazon Prime Video person, then you can find that episode there. And that's it.
I have to check that out. And regarding your book, where can listeners purchase that?
Well, so the book will be re-released in December of this year.
Okay.
A lot of things have happened this year that I want to go back and add into this next release of the book. So the expectation is that it will be released December of 2020.
Okay. Keep us posted on that. I'm also looking forward to checking it out. Cool.
If you research the book, you'll see pictures of it. And so I refer to myself as the millennial mentor because I've worked a lot with the next generation of leaders. And I've been very vocal about diversity and inclusion.
Right.
Even before this year, because I think that a lot of people did not include young people in the diversity and inclusion topics, right? It's race and it's color, it's background. And I'm like, actually, a diverse team should be from different age groups as well. And a lot of people just never really considered that. And right now, and this was, again, I've spoken at the National Diversity Council leadership meeting for multiple years. And to see the look of shock on people's faces when I'm like, we're here to talk about diversity and inclusion, and I want to talk about millennials. And they're like, what?
Why are we talking about them? What do they have to do with it?
And so making sure that our young people are being represented in the boardroom. And that is very difficult, right? Because no one really wants to think about future generations. I'm not going to say no one, very few people.
Right.
I will say that I've met quite a few leaders that are passionate about preparing the next generation of leaders, people like yourself. And so, diversity and inclusion is not just what you can see. It's about diversity of thought, and that typically comes from multi-generational conversations. So I love doing that. I love taking my 13-year-old to work. He's been along with me for most of his life. He's been in boardrooms. He likes to wear his blazers and his ties.
Awesome exposure. Yeah.
But it also reminds the leaders around the table to, let's think about Miles, right? They put a face to a group of people. They're like, well, I remember we had this board meeting and Sherry James brought her son in and he asked a question that none of us had ever even considered, right?
The value of, just the diversity of age and everything. And
everything. And, with people having different ways that they identify from a sexuality perspective, that's normal. It's not considered diversity and inclusion to my son, because he's like, of course people have their own identities from a sexual, like, why are you making a big deal of it? That's just, So definitely the diversity and inclusion is very different than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And if we can take the mindset of our children and listen to them, they have a kind of all-inclusive team mentality. Like, hey, this is my crew.
Right.
My crew looks different and we come from different backgrounds, but it's my crew and we're going to win as a team and we're going to lose as a team. Whatever. But there's a lot for us to learn from that.
Exactly.
So, super passionate about the diversity and inclusion part of the work that we're doing. So I don't know if you could tell, but that
I can certainly get excited about that. And I just like I won't call it a unique perspective. It's more of something that's often overlooked. Like you said, we think of the diversity and inclusion, automatically think race or gender. But as far as age, that's a big one. And to ignore that, then organizations are missing so much value that having that diversity of age brings, because it's just different perspectives. So yeah, the greater perspectives you have, the better. I agree.
And it will give your listeners the opportunity to find out what their children are passionate about.
Right.
This can be a renaissance age, right? Your children, if they're passionate about art or building or architecture or whatever it is, find a mentor that they can partner with, right? Which is your platform. But to say, you know, how do I change my thinking? So if from a project management perspective, I will ask my son, like, well, does this make sense? Yeah. Right? Or is there a better, how would you do this?
Right.
And to like, oh, wow, I wouldn't have thought of that, but
exactly.
So that's, I just wanted to add that tidbit.
It's very important. Happy you did. And it really just highlights just how much we can learn from our children and be amazed. Like, just ask them and listen and you'll be truly amazed. Absolutely. Well, again, Sherry, thanks a lot for taking time out of you have a lot going on. So take time out of your busy day. And I know you have to start getting ready for your show upcoming. I really appreciate you stopping by and sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you so much, Darius. You let me know if there's anything I can do to help you guys out. I'm here for you. No, I'm never too busy to help. So reach out if you need anything, okay?
Appreciate it.
You've been listening to Mentor Select. Mentor Select. Parenting teens to be successful adults. Hosted by Darius Phillips. Raising teenagers is hard. Understatement of the century. We get it. That's why Darius interviews leading experts that work with teens, educators, counselors, mentors, and authors to give you practical tips, strategies, and resources that you can incorporate immediately to better connect and understand your teen. That's why we do the show. Be sure to share Mentor Select with other parents of teens. Follow us on social media at Mentor Select to stay up to date on the latest tips, strategies, and resources for parenting teens. Send your questions and comments to darich@mentorselect.com. Tune in every Wednesday for new episodes. Till next time, this is Mentor Select.